something to be real, do you have to perceive it? Anyway, that's philosophy class in college. It falls into the Bhagavatam. It's a question that's raised in the Bhagavatam in a different way. There are things when Krishna showed the universes before Lord Brahma, and he showed the cowherd boys before Brahma, there were ones in the cave that had temporary bodies, like we have temporary bodies. But the ones before Brahma, these were spiritual. These were Krishna's forms in the likeness of the cowherd boys, exact likeness. So much so that their mother and father couldn't tell the difference between their son and Krishna's expansion that looked just like their son, sounded just like their son, laughed just like their son, smiled just like their son. They couldn't tell the difference, except for one thing. They had affection for their son like they had affection for Krishna. Anyway, the many nice things that we heard, but there's one of the topics is what's real and what's imaginary or illusion. That's a topic in Brahma's, and we're going to touch on it. And then one of the statements that's made is, he appears in this world so we can see the distinction. Said negatively, if we don't have some direct experience of transcendence, we won't really know what reality is. And nor, without knowing what reality is, we won't know what illusion is. We won't be, supposing somebody's an atheist. There are some people that are. Or they just don't know. So they're really not in contact with the Supreme. That's just their consciousness. So what transcendence is, they don't have a clue. So Brahma is saying, you appear in different avatar forms so that people can have a clue. This is illusion, and that's reality. But the tendency is to see that reality also is illusion because that's their frame of reference. That's their consciousness. It's in the verses that we're covering, but that's already spoken because the source of everything is the source of all avatars. By name he mentions, and he's looking at Krishna saying, you're the source of all those avatars. You're a little boy, 7 years old, but you're my father. And Krishna goes, what? Please consider what you're saying. You're the oldest living being in the universe, and I'm just a little 7-year-old boy. How can you say I'm your father? Please consider. So then he gives his explanation. You are Narayan. I'll prove it. He gives his philosophical proofs. And he's right. But that original form of Krishna in Vrindavan is the source of Narayan. And he's the source of Vishnu, and he's the source of the avatars, and he's the source of the jivas, and he's the source of everything. Because he's the absolute truth. And Brahma is understanding that. So those are some of the puzzle pieces. And now we're going to discuss 5 verses. And to keep it simple, I'll try to do a little summary at the beginning. In this discussion of reality and illusion, there's already been some talk about mirage. You know what a mirage is. A mirage is in a desert, it looks like there's water, but by definition, a desert is a place where there's no water. There's no water in the desert. But a mirage looks like there's water in the desert. There is water, and over there is a mirage. So it's something that appears to be what it is not really. That's mirage or illusion. Another example given by our acharyas is the horns of a rabbit. There's no such thing. Rabbits don't have horns. There's not a weird species that has horns. They just don't have horns. If they had horns, they'd be called something else. Rabbits don't have horns. But someone thinks a rabbit's horn. There's no such thing. There's horns and there's rabbits, but so. In what we're going to be hearing twice is seeing a rope and thinking it's a snake. And when you see a rope and think it's a snake, you may have some feelings like, it's a snake. And you can't get over the fear of thinking of it as a snake until you recognize it's not a snake. You can't see what it is until you can let go of the notion of what you think it is or what it isn't. Yes? Clear? Okay, I'm looking at your two daughters. I just want to make sure we're on the same wavelength here. So it's used twice because it's important. And earlier there's other examples because it's important. Because why is it important? When how we view the world has a significant impact upon how we view ourselves. And if we can't get the picture of the world around us right, how are we going to get the picture of ourselves right? And if we can't get the picture of ourselves right, if we can't get the picture of Krishna right, that's what the lesson is here. So how important, it's it's really important to know what Krishna is. And not just notional, like I believe in God and that's good enough for me. But Brahma, wants us to, the Bhagavatam is providing us the opportunity to get a much clearer picture of who God is, who the absolute truth is in his different qualities and features and characteristics and how all things relate to him. You know the word sambandha? You two girls? You've heard the word? It's a Hindi word and a Sanskrit word. It means relationship. You heard the word? Now you have. It's one of the essential elements of knowledge, is to know the relationship of all things with their source of emanation. All things. The couch that you're leaning against, and the cushion that you're sitting on, the floor, and stuff. What's the relation of stuff? Yesterday evening, there were two boys that were younger than you two, and we were talking about the kitchen table and the chairs at the kitchen. So they have a relation with Krishna. They're meant for Krishna's service. There's a verse in the second canto we were speaking about. Tad angam means paraphernalia. It says either verse is paraphernalia to be used in devotional service to Krishna. Three things. Krishna's form is real. Second, he has a place, a dham, his home, and that's also my home. And then there's this place. That's not my home. The material creation is not our home. It's not our eternal home. Where our eternal home is with Krishna. Krishna's form is all spiritual, his home and our home is all spiritual. And then there's this paraphernalia, tadangam, that can be used in offering to Krishna. And one who sees like that can know themselves factually. Then you can know jiva instead of body, and then I and mine. Because if you don't see tadankam, you don't see paraphernalia in relation to Krishna, you're going to see it some other way. And what's the other way? It's an object for sense enjoyment. The world is an opportunity for me to exploit for sense enjoyment. There are different varieties of it. That's called material life. And then spiritual life is, I see it in relation to Krishna, it's meant for Krishna's enjoyment. And that's how I live my life. That's how spiritual people live their lives, and that's what the Bhagavatam is teaching. That's the practical effect of all of what we're going to be hearing. So now we're ready to hear. This is Canto 10. Krishna is in Vrindavan. Brahma's paid a visit to Krishna in Vrindavan. It's chapter 14. He's offering prayers, having seen what he saw, what we just discussed. And now he's glorifying Krishna, making it clear. Again, the topic is the rope and the snake, that is reality and illusion. You have to let go of illusory conceptions in order to know who you really are. And to know who you really are and the illusory conceptions, you have to know who Krishna is. Otherwise, you're going to get it wrong. You'll think of the body to be the self and the world around you to be paraphernalia for sense gratification. That's the default position. And it doesn't, even if you're really smart, like, good mental speculator, you'll still get it wrong. You'll still have a complicated life. Okay, so now we're ready for 25 through 29, chapter 14. 25, translation. A person who mistakes a rope for a snake becomes fearful. But he then gives up his fear upon realizing that the so-called snake does not exist. Similarly, for those who fail to recognize you as the supreme soul of all souls, the expansive, illusory material energy existence arises. But knowledge of you at once causes it to subside. The Maya, the illusory effect, subsides. So it's still, the table is still here, but I'll see it in a different way if I see and have an understanding of Krishna. So here's the purport. Those submerged in illusion see material existence as infinite, just as one who is submerged in water sees only water all around him. For example, material scientists and philosophers submerged deep within the ocean of material illusion imagine that material nature extends infinitely in all directions. In fact, the material creation is a finite ocean of ignorance in which foolish living entities are unceremoniously dunked by the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And second paragraph, to be trapped in a world in which all things are born and die is certainly a fearful experience. Anyone trapped in a dark place naturally becomes fearful. Since material life is always covered by the darkness of ignorance, every conditioned soul is fearful. The material nature is not ultimate reality, and thus analysis of matter can never provide answers to ultimate questions. The dark, snake-like existence called material life immediately disappears as soon as one opens his eyes to the bright light of Krishna consciousness. I'm going to, I hope it's okay. Your two daughters here, you're a little young and you may not like philosophy so much. But here's some philosophy. I hope it's okay. It's okay? Okay. I'll tell some stories afterwards, so we keep it light. But here's philosophy. The Atma, you know the meaning of Atma? The soul? Atma. The Atma, the pure Jiva is the root. By ignorance of Jiva, one attains samsara. You know the meaning? Samsara? Cycle of birth and death? Samsara. By ignorance of who we really are, we're caught in birth and death. By knowledge of Atma, one destroys samsara. Therefore, what is the use of knowing about the Lord? Some people argue. Just know about the Atma. Bas, that's sufficient. This idea is refuted by stating the opposite. What's the opposite? Those who do not know themselves as Atma end up with material bodies by the agency of Maya because of ignorance of the root Swarup or spiritual form of the Lord. By knowledge of the Lord, which destroys ignorance of the Lord, one attains knowledge of Swarup of the Jiva. Swarup means form, spirit, personal form. And this knowledge destroys ignorance caused by identity with the body. The example is the rope and snake. Then he gives reference to one of my favorite verses in the Bhagavatam, Bhayam Dutiyam Abhiniveshi Syat, etc. This is a verse from 11th Canto, chapter 3. The Navayogendras are speaking to King Nimi, and he wants to know what's illusion. And he adds that fear arises. I'll read the translation. For the jiva averse to the Lord, there will be samsara consisting of identity with body and lack of identity with the soul. When you forget who you are, arising from a desire to enjoy the temporary, we forget who we are. We're covered by Maya. We forget who we are. Forget the Lord. We're in La La Land, and we feel fear. This fear is when you're in a dark place. You can't see. When there's no light, you can't see. It's fearful. So when we forget the Lord, we forget who we are. We feel fear. Therefore, the intelligent person taking Guru as his Lord and very self should fully worship the Lord with pure bhakti. One of the great Vaishnava commentators, Lord Chaitanya spoke of him regularly. His name is Sridhar Swami. He lived before Lord Chaitanya lived, and he made commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. So Sridhar Swami comments on this 11th canto verse. Since Maya, created by the Lord, creates fear, the intelligent person worships the Lord, who's the controller of Maya. That's very logical. Question, but fear arises because of identity with body, which arises from the ignorance of Atma. So, what does Maya do? The answer, for the person ignorant of the Lord, the form of the living entity does not manifest because of Maya. He thinks he is the body. Then, by absorption in identity, misidentity, he develops fear. This is well known among people in Maya. He quotes from Bhagavad Gita, same idea. Just by knowledge of the position of the Lord, in general, Maya is destroyed. It does not require realization of the original form of Krishna in Vrindavan. That's like superlative. But just the existence of the Lord reveals the existence of who we are, gives light to this dark place, and we can see it as it is, that it's paraphernalia for service to the Lord. And then we're happy, and we're not fearful. The effects, this dispelling of fear, the effects are observed in the name of Rama, making reference to Ramayana, one who calls my name, etc. But knowledge of Krishna, who makes his appearance in complete fullness, is the greatest knowledge. And the result is the appearance of the highest prema for Krishna. This should be understood from this verse. That's Acharya's commentary. So that's it for that verse. The rope and snake The statement is, you have to let go of the misconception that it's a rope, that it's a snake in order to overcome fear. Because the misconception and the fear connected with the misconception blocks you from seeing what the thing really is. You know, when somebody, oh no, it's a snake. You can try to reassure them, no. Look, I'll go and touch it. It's, it's not a snake, it's a rope. Oh. But as long as it's a snake, it's a snake. So, as long as we're having a misconception of who we are, that's the snake. Then there's material emotions, negative emotions. In this world, it's a big profession to deal with people's negative emotions. The fastest growing field in medicine today is people dealing with negative depression, and the pharmaceuticals connected with it. There's some figure like 75% of the pharmaceuticals that are sold today are dealing with depression and other types of negative emotions. And it all arises from I would say the other way. The antidote for it is reading Srimad Bhagavatam, understanding the form of the Lord, because with the form of the Lord, then we can see, oh, it's not a snake. It's a rope. I'm not part of this world. I'm in the world, and I'm doing stuff, and I'm engaging with stuff in the world. But that's not who I am, and I'm doing some service to Krishna while I'm in this world. So we got the house, and we got, our homework at school, and, things that we do. Brush our teeth in the morning, and, we do things. That's part of our service to Krishna. And you connect that to Krishna, and then the negative emotion thing is light comes and darkness is dispelled. So it's going to touch on the rope and snake metaphor one more time before we're done. Text 26. Material bondage. The conception of material bondage and the conception of liberation are both manifestations of ignorance. That's easy to understand. Material bondage is ignorance. What about the conception of liberation? How's that manifestations of ignorance? Sounds like you're free with ignorance. But it's a manifestation of ignorance, just the flip side of the same coin. Being outside the scope of true knowledge, these two, material bondage and conceptions of liberation, cease to exist when one correctly understands that the pure spirit soul is distant from matter and always fully conscious. At that time, bondage and liberation no longer have any significance, just as day and night have no significance for one who lives on the sun. That's really easy to understand. If you're living on the sun, or if you're from the perspective of the sun, there's no night. There's no night, then there's no day. There's no day and night on the sun. So it connects with the previous verse. If you know who you really are, one who knows the true self, the concerns for material bondage and the conception of liberation have no meaning. It's part of illusion. Here's the short purport. Material bondage is illusion because the living entity actually has no real relationship with the material world. Here's this again, this reality and illusion. We do stuff, but it's not who we are when we do stuff. We do stuff. We act responsibly. You say, well, that's not who I am, so forget it. I'm not going to do my homework. I'm not going to go to work. I'm not going to brush my teeth. I'm not going to, because it's not who I am. That's not what's being spoken. It's not who we are, but we engage in our prescribed duties that's suitable for us. according to our age and our situation and our nature. We do those things in a theistic way, and we're simultaneously aware of, becoming more aware of who we are. Has this family listened to or viewed the Yadapar's video? The Hare Krishna movie? It's available online, and before we leave, they'll show you the link so you can go and. I'm watching it the fourth time. It's an hour and 30 minutes, and there's a lot in it. And twice in that hour and a half video, Bhaktisiddhanta's primary mission and Prabhupada's primary mission is this: know who you are. And when you know who you are, you can be happy. An interviewer asked Prabhupada, Swamiji, if everyone in the world became like you, so absorbed in what your teachings are, what would the world be like? And he said, everyone would be happy. Because when people don't know who they are, they think they know who they are, but they don't know who they are, they're inviting illusion. And that's a place of unhappiness, it's darkness. And Bhaktisiddhanta's, same message. I mean, it's the Bhagavatam, same message. It's helping us so that so we can become happy. We don't just become frozen and stiff and we can't do anything because it's not who I am. We do all kinds of things that's very joyful because it's in connection with who we are, because it's a connection with who we're connected with. So, because of false ego, the conditioned soul identifies himself with matter. Therefore, so-called liberation is simply the giving up of the illusion, rather than release from actual bondage. Yet, even if we think that the suffering of material illusion is real, and that liberation is thus meaningful release from suffering, the mere absence of material existence is still insignificant compared to the achievement of factual spiritual life, which is the positive, eternal reality, opposed to the negative illusion of material life. So, like this, Prabhupada's very simple explanation. Supposing someone's banging their head against the wall. Bang, bang, bang. Oh, oh. And then they stop. That's not what real happiness is. You stop the banging your head against the wall, but what are the activities of real happiness? That's beyond cessation of material bondage. If liberation is thought of as the cessation of material bondage, it's incomplete. Not who you are, what real happiness is. And if you have real happiness, you have both of those. You stop banging your head against the wall, and you don't have that. You don't have the misery of banging your head, but you have much more. Ultimately, Krishna consciousness or pure love of God is the only significant, meaningful, and permanent status of every living entity. Paragraph. Since the darkness of night is caused by the absence of the sun, one would not experience night within the sun, nor would one experience individual days separated by night. Similarly, within the pure living entity, there is no material darkness, and thus no experience of liberation from such darkness. When the conditioned soul comes to this platform of pure consciousness, he becomes fit to associate with the Supreme Pure in the Lord's own abode. It's a back home, back to Godhead message over here. And saying the same thing, just explaining it in different language. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes, in this verse, the fact that acceptance of a false world also make liberation false is made clear. The words bondage in the world and liberation from the world, which both arise from ignorance, cease when a person has true knowledge of the jiva. Just as the day and night, taken separately from the sun, have meaning, but when from the point of view of the sun, they have no meaning. That's easy. This is the rope and the snake thing, just looked at from a different lens. Jiva Goswami writes, bondage, falsity is explained. This is the theme. Because there's all this other discussion, several verses before this evening. What's reality, what's illusion? Is the universe real? Is what I saw inside, in front of me just a few minutes ago? Brahma to Krishna, you showed all these things. Was that real or not real? What Mother Jasoda saw in Krishna's mouth, was that real or not real? What's reality, what's illusion? That's the topic. And one can make arguments this way and that way. That which is seen in relation to the Supreme, that's real, because it's real. That's where it comes from. And you see it separately, that's illusion. It exists, but it's not as we think it exists. Falsity is explained, Jiva Goswami writes. Bondage and liberation are different from knowledge of Atma. When one reflects on Atma, which is separate from matter, these states, bondage and liberation, no longer exist. Just like on the sun, there's no day and night. Very simple. Those who think of you, the soul of all souls, only as a jiva, they're fools. Those who think of you, Paramatma, to be just a pure jiva, making no distinction between the living entity and the Supreme, they become materialists. Even they have a spiritual conception. There is spirit in matter, but if they think of the God as like us, that's a material conception. Okay, and now we're closing into the finish line. If I had known that we were going to have two younger girls here, I would have done this differently, would have planned this. There's a nice little video, a recording that summarizes this with pictures, and it's like really easy to understand. So what I've been doing, I've showed that like 4 times, and now I'm just drilling down a little bit more. And then I was planning tomorrow evening, maybe you can tune in tomorrow evening, see the images and the summary of all of what we've been saying, including the rope and the snake metaphor. Okay. Text 28. Oh, unlimited Lord, the saintly devotees seek you within their own bodies by rejecting everything separate from you. Now, there isn't anything separate. It's rejecting the conception that there's anything separate from you. Let's say it the other way. Prabhupada speaking. There's only 2 things. There's Krishna and there's Krishnas. And there's not a third thing in the creation of God. There's no such thing as void. So what exists separate from the source of everything? The answer is nothing. Whatever there is that exists has its connection. So how can you separate text 28? O unlimited Lord, the saintly devotees seek you out within their own bodies by rejecting everything separate from you. Well, there's nothing separate. It's the misconception that there's something separate. The thinking of that the rope is a snake, the misconception that it has some separate existence. Us, our body, the table and chairs, your homework, and anything else, and going to work and everything. has its, in the life of devotion, in the life of knowledge of who we really are, that has its connection with Supreme. And that's how we live our lives. At least we cultivate, we practice that. And cultivate, because that's reality. Indeed, how can discriminating persons appreciate the real nature of a rope lying before them until they refute the illusion that it is a snake? This is directly the verse. It's the same metaphor used 3 verses apart. And then there's one verse that's concluding. I'll just go there. Text 29. Well, here's a little commentary. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur writes about 28. What is necessary to understand this spiritual jiva, I guess, about? In order to reject everything material, one must first reject the false conception that one is a body. That's the snake. I'm not the body. You can't know who you are without giving up the misconception. Next, the procedure is mentioned. As long as one does not reject the false idea that there is a snake present, how can a person understand that it is only a rope? Asangoyam purushaha, taking this stuti statement, the jiva thus has no connection with the gross and subtle bodies. Thus the jiva has no bodily suffering. Only by ignorance does the jiva believe he is a body. Can one know the pure spirit soul without rejecting everything related to the body? Through knowledge that one is soul, not body? No. He cannot know the soul without rejecting. But what strengthens that rejecting is having a proper conception, hearing it and hearing it and hearing it, and the presence of Krishna in your life. And the presence of Krishna comes in our life from starting with chanting. That sound vibration of Krishna's name brings Krishna into our life. Even people don't even know what it is. You watch this video, the Hare Krishna video? His initial audience were really misfit people. I mean, the counterculture. Some of them were really good. Some of them were just like drugged out, very dissatisfied young people, the hippie generation. But there was a spark inside. They wanted something other than the drug culture. They wanted something real, and they just didn't have access to something real. So when they got the chanting and Prabhupada and his teachings, they took to it. They left behind the misconception and accepted what they received from Prabhupada. But it started with chanting and prasadam, of course. So here's the final for this evening. Now this is text 29. It's a well-known verse. It's if somebody listening likes to learn verses, text 29 is a really good one to learn. Atapi te deva padambuja dvaya prasada deshanugrahita eva hi janati tattvam bhagavan mahimno nachanya eko pi chiram vichinvan. Prabhupada would recite this often. My Lord, if one is favored by even a slight trace of the mercy of your lotus feet, he can understand the greatness of your personality, but those who speculate to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead are unable to know you, even though they continue to study the Vedas for many years. And tomorrow when we see that little video, or that, it's not a video, it's a recording with PowerPoint images. This point is made very strongly, and it goes right back to the very first part of Brahma's prayers. We're just, drilling down on the same point with some detail. We need mercy. And to get that mercy, we call for it. Krishna, please engage me in your service. That's the Hare Krishna mantra, call. And then mercy comes. He comes in the form of sound, and just even a little can enable one to realize things that by study of the Vedas for many, many, many lifetimes one will never get. The Gyan process doesn't give access to Krishna's lotus feet. The Bhakti process gives access to Krishna's lotus feet. And even if one doesn't know that one is engaging in Bhakti, supposing people take prasadam and they don't know it's prasadam, it has absolute benefit. Supposing somebody hears the chanting of Hare Krishna, they don't know what it is. Watch this Hare Krishna video. I mean, there's Boy George is singing Hare Krishna. Hippies in the park are singing Hare Krishna. They don't know what it is. But it has some magic to it. Like the magician pulling the rabbit out of the hat. The reality is coming just by contact with Krishna through his name. And it's very powerful. It's recommended for the sage, and it works. Makes people happy. And leave behind the illusion of searching for happiness through objects out there. A life of material consciousness. It's definitely a contrasting alternative. Very, very different paradigm. Prabhupada speaks this verse. It's quoted in Chaitanya Charitamrita, the verse that I just read, 10:14:29, Tatapi Deva Padambujam Dvaya. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada speaks, Krishna is very eager to bestow his mercy upon the conditioned living beings who are uselessly struggling with the Lord's illusory energy Maya. The conditioned soul struggles for happiness through sense gratification and for knowledge through mental speculation. Both processes ultimately bring him to a morose and hopeless condition. If the conditioned soul surrenders to the lotus feet of Krishna and thus acquires even a trace of his causeless mercy, the whole situation is changed and the living entity can begin his real life of bliss and knowledge. And there's lots of nice commentary because it's an important verse. This is verse 29, and there's more than 60 verses in the whole chapter. So we've got a lot to go. I think I'm going to have to go a little faster than I've been doing the last several days. I appreciate the Bhagavatam a lot. Prabhupada would say like this, religious people say, God is great. And it's true, God is great. Now, how great God is, that they do not know. And if you know, just say, how great somebody is. One of the places that I visit in India, there's a girl, one of their daughters is something like 8 or 9 years old, and she's developed this fascination for gymnastics. So she was really surprised that I knew the names of Simone Biles and what's the other one's name? That her role model was not Simone, because Simone is like in outer space, but another American gymnast. I forget her name. Whatever her name. Don't know. So this fascination for something of this world, I mean, it probably came from something she did in her former life, and now she has an inclination in this life to do that same something. And, but in this life, she's born in a devotee family, like you two are, and she knows how to connect things, at least in principle, how to connect things with Krishna. So she wants to be able, when she goes to her gym classes, she was sharing this with me, to tell her gymnastic friends something about Krishna. I mean, she wants to do well in gymnastics. Or somebody may want to do well with whatever. But take the opportunity of what our psychophysical nature is and simultaneously give the message of Krishna. Or some people are musicians. In this Hare Krishna film, there's this little description of getting to know the Beatles and how it happened. It's like there's a much bigger picture, but they give something of a picture in the video. And here's a little detail. One of the persons that was part of their musical performance was Jamuna. Have you heard her name, Mother Jamuna? When we, in our temples, we sing the Govinda prayers, it's her voice, Jamuna. So Jamuna told me this story. I didn't have much association with her, but she shared. She has a really fantastic, professional sounding voice. So when George Harrison heard her singing, he said, if you like, I can make you famous. I know how to do it. You know, because they had developed camaraderie with one another. And he meant it. So she said, let me think about it. And 2 days later she said, no, thank you. I don't want that lifestyle. I just want to sing for Krishna. Then he said, well, then let's make a song for Krishna. They went to the Apple studio. It's narrated a little differently in the film, but they made a 45 RPM recording that sold 700,000 copies in the first day, with George Harrison playing guitar and John Lennon doing the mix, and you know, but her voice is just fantastic. But she's using it for Krishna. Use whatever that you have for Krishna. Use the house for Krishna. Use the table and chairs for Krishna. Do your homework for Krishna. Do everything for Krishna. This little girl do her gymnastics for Krishna. At least, you know, take the opportunity to share Krishna's message with the other gymnastic kids, and set a nice example of, here's how one who's a Krishna devotee lives. These are things that I don't speak about. These are things that I won't eat. This is my lifestyle. And be true to yourself, because it's a way to help other people become attracted to Krishna, because Krishna is all attractive. And there's a philosophical foundation to it, which we're hearing here. That we can give up the snake conception and take the rope conception, and use the rope for whatever is useful. Use this body for service to Krishna. Use the table and chairs and couch and computer and everything in service to Krishna. With the right foundation, it's all Krishna's paraphernalia, meant for his service. Okay, so let's see if there's some discussion. I hope the philosophy part wasn't okay. Let's do the ones that, if you have a question, you first. It's fun that way, and it gives people online a chance to send in their text message. Anything?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. This is very nicely described, that from a perspective of sun, there is no conception of day and night, and no conception of liberation or bondage.
Could you turn the speaker this way? Thank you. Yes, keep going.
Yeah, so that's very beautifully described. The question is, there are many people who have gone to a path spiritually, and have gone to a spiritual path where they talk about merging or getting liberated, and how to, sometimes when we talk, they are not willing to give up that attachment to that knowledge.
Yes. It's gradual
It's
process.
gradual process. And I was wondering if there is
Technique,
yes.
an approach that makes it easier for them to bridge that
Yeah.
distance.
Yeah. Whereas, yes, Maharaj, whereas people who are not aware of those, it's easy to mold them into
Yes.
right off the bat truth.
Yes. Yes. What you're saying is true.
Yeah. Hare Krishna.
It's not exactly a technique, it's a principle. The principle is purity is the force. Something that I ask myself when I'm in a situation like you just described, if Prabhupada was here, would the situation get better, stay the same, or get worse? It's an easy question to answer. So why is it not getting better? The purity isn't the same. So that's what I can do in principle. Now, when purity is there, something else happens. Buddhi, it comes from Supersoul. How to. But the force behind the how to is not just a technique. It's the purity behind the instrument. And so here's another principle. You find out what somebody's interested in, and you nourish that which they're interested in, that has its connection with Krishna. That's a principle. You may be interested over here, and they're interested over there. You're talking over here, they're not interested. So find something that's interesting for them, and go with it. Now, one of the things that's interesting to everybody is food. So that's like a universal introduction to elevation of consciousness through prasadam. They don't have to know it's prasadam. If they ask, you can tell them, cautiously, but prasadam distribution with those people that are like, they don't want to let go. And then just be very patient. And here's another, this is part of the purity principle, but be a model of that which you speak. It's right in the Hare Krishna video. The young people said, he wasn't a hypocrite. We trusted him because he was real. And that was like really important to people of our generation. And it's important to anybody. Now some people, they don't care. And that's like, that's a hard nut to crack. They don't care. But people that have a little spark, they want to know, but they're attached to their conceptions. Yes, it's more difficult than somebody who doesn't have like a rock solid, I'm not budging from this conception position.
Yes, Maharaj. Like you described yesterday, Srila Prabhupada was dancing with the hippies.
Uh-huh.
And Srila Prabhupada went along with them.
Yeah.
And then whatever, because that was interesting to them.
Yeah.
And so...
And they didn't see him, he's a foreigner in our land. They accept him as one of them. Here's another way of saying, you're over here, they're over there, these people you're speaking about. So you build a bridge, and you go hang out where they are. And you don't judge them, you just hang out where they are. That's like what they're interested in. And you have this exchange, they're interested in what I'm interested in. And then you just show good character. So it's not a strategy or trick. It's just be who you are. And then you build trust because you're a genuine person. And then you point to the bridge. There's something over on that other side of the bridge. And you take their hand and they're willing to go because they trust you. Because you demonstrated trustworthiness. You're genuine. You speak one thing and you do the same thing you speak. You're a person of integrity. You're worthy of trust. Then you point to something and they're willing to at least look at it. That's how to help them let go of the snake conception. Be trustworthy.
Question from Sri Hari, Rajeshwari Pranmataji's son. If Krishna wants us all to come back to him, why did he create Maya? Because Maya tries to block us. How does it help?
Why did Krishna create Maya? If he wants us to come back to him? It's because we wanted Maya. He didn't want. He was saying, no, isn't that nice? I want. You'll struggle. I want. Okay. And once we go, there's affinity for matter is very strong, and so pulling us back, he doesn't interfere with our free will. We're holding on to Maya. Not that only that Maya is holding on to us, we're holding on to Maya. We're attached. We're not attached to our suffering. We're attached to the concept of trying to be the enjoyer independent of Krishna. That's what we're attached to. So the object is there. The illusion is there for those that want it. And with the advice, it's illusion. It's a place of suffering. I'll make happiness over there.
Radha Kunj Bihari Prabhu's question from yesterday's class about paraphernalia. Are relationships in this material universe also paraphernalia?
Yes, everything. Now there's some parts of the universe we stay away from. Let's say intoxication, gambling, and so forth. We stay away from certain things.
This is Rukmavati Mataji's question. How can I practice to see myself as a soul?
How can I practice to see myself as a soul? Well, I'll give 3 suggestions. One starts with hearing, because through transcendental sound vibration, one can connect with that which is beyond the coverings. It's of the same quality as the soul, so I can practice being conscious of myself as soul by hearing Bhagavad Gita and spiritual sound vibration. That's practical. It has an outcome, a practical outcome also. And second is then knowledge and detachment. Gyan Vairagya, that is, I'm looking at my hand. So this is my hand, my arm, my leg, my foot, my head. So then, just by language, there's that which is mine, and there's me. I'm the observer. I'm the proprietor of that which I'm saying is mine, or my thoughts. So there's the thought, and then there's the observer of the thought. In responsive to her question, you act in knowledge, and it leads to realization. It leads to detachment, and it leads to realization. And then that's, yourself as soul. And then a third is to see others as soul. Now that's it starts within oneself, but beyond oneself there's other living entities. Just yesterday there was a question from a 7-year-old girl in Boston, wanting to know, how do I help my friends understand about meat eating? stop meat eating. And so we had this discussion. Now I didn't go there, but one of the answers could have been, maybe she's listening now, Radha, there's a soul within. So that the argument that her kids and friends in school are saying is, or at least her age group, there's only a moment's pain, so what's the big deal? It's only a moment's pain. So if it's only a moment's pain, then why not you? So if you wouldn't want to have a moment's pain, the consequence of which is death, and then somebody eats the body that's left over, what about the living entity that's in that other animal body? There's a soul, and they're conscious. So regarding other living entities as soul is a way of helping to practice seeing ourselves as soul, is my point. Like, there's a plant. You water the plant from time to time, I imagine. Yeah. So it's not just, a nice decoration for the house, but you invite the plant in. You take care of the plant. You can't just neglect it. We wouldn't want we wouldn't want to go without water for we're just. So take care. If you want to invite some life in your house, you take care. It's just respecting there's a soul within. And the soul, that because there's a certain type of body, the body needs certain types of things. They need some sunlight, they need some water, need some fresh air. So, but we do those things thinking of the soul that's within. And you neglect, and the soul leaves. I'm out of here. You're not a good caretaker.
This is Archana Gupta Mataji. You mentioned about material bondage and thinking for liberation are both part of ignorance, like a coin.
Yeah.
Can you please elaborate? It is really inconceivable for me.
Elaborate what?
Elaborate on that point of how material bondage and liberation are two sides of a coin.
It's exactly a verse, and she can go back and read the verse. I don't mind elaborating, but I recommend if she really, really wants to understand it better, go back and look at it more closely. Which one is it? 26? I believe. Yeah, text 26. So that the main point is this: there's who you really are. Who you really are is not part of this world. Liberation is negation of who you are not. That kind of liberation is also material. That's the flip side. I am this body, I'm not this body. I'm part of this world, I'm not part of this world. That's who you aren't, but then who are you? Liberation that's the negation type, the Sayuja Mukti type, is not who you really are. It's also material. It's the flip side of the same coin. Just like artificial renunciation. So material life is a bad experience. So I give it up. I become a Naga Baba. Just go live naked in the forest. But monkeys live naked in the forest, and they're not spiritually realized. They don't know who they are. So negation is part, but it's totally incomplete, because then who are you? The who are you part, I'm spirit soul, part and parcel of the Supreme Spirit, then it's complete. Otherwise it's material. That's the point. But you can go back and read text 26.
And Damodar Vilas Prabhu, question is, does the Chaturshloki verses from Bhagavatam are further elaboration of Chaturshloki verses from Bhagavad Gita?
Not one-to-one, no. Not that this one correlates with this one, that one correlates with that one. It's not like that. That's it. You have something? No? Anyone else? Or we're ready to wrap up? Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. Are these deities from Columbus? Yes. Yes? Did you live in Columbus at some time?
Yeah, in that area.
In the area.
Southeast of Columbus.
Did you go to school there?
I did go ahead.
Uh-huh. I know a family that has deities exactly like this, from the same mold. They live in Tennessee. But